Ni hao, wishes Stephanie. Ah, our girl Kelly Clarkson, one of my favorite singers of all time, and that's not an exaggeration, has a new album out. So of course I went from some of her new songs to Piece by Piece, which is an older song, and I cannot listen to that song without crying my eyes out. And since my HSK, it's Saturday, June 9th, my HSK test is tomorrow. And since I'm under a little bit of stress, not necessarily all bad stress, there's some of the stress that I'm creating by double studying 4 hours a day instead of 2 for a few days is actually helping me absorb some stuff. So I'm taking advantage of that as much as I can. But it is still stress, so it's nice to stress cry to get rid of some of that. But it also reminded me that I'm trying to identify with this channel the reasons why I haven't gotten fluent in a second language ever before in my life. The things that have stopped me, the things that I have let stop me, the obstacles that I've put up in my own way. Because I'm convinced there are external factors that don't help, but I'm pretty sure it's all me. Like 95 to 97% me. I don't know why those numbers, they just are. And one of the ones that's really uncomfortable and very personal to talk about is language shame. But it's there, and it's high. And it's embarrassing as a woman in her late 40s to say my childhood language shame still affects me. It affects me so much that when I am actually aware of it, I'm shocked that it's still there. But I feel like it's a daily experience. And there's so much to say about this, and I do want to get this into 5 minutes because nothing's ever totally good or totally bad. My parents were not native English speakers. My parents spoke multiple languages in the house, but how do I say this? Everybody does the best they can, and I will never understand why my parents acted like they did. But I don't think they really wanted children, and I don't think they knew how to love an offspring in a way that might be beneficial to that person. And this happens in a lot of families. It just so happens that there were languages swirling around while all of this happened. And I think that there were 2 things that happened in my childhood that feed on my language shame, even to this day. One is that I didn't pick up the languages around me as a protection. If I couldn't understand what they were saying, then there weren't more words that could hurt. And 2 is because they weren't fluent. They were fluent speakers, that's the thing. They just weren't highly accurate speakers sometimes. And that has always made me very self-conscious about my own language. When I started to make this channel and to make my podcast, I couldn't believe the number of mistakes that I made as I was speaking. And then as my awareness was heightened and I listened to other people that grew up with the English language making podcasts and YouTube channels, I noticed that they made the same mistakes, and I thought, hey, it's not just my language background. It's not just my parental mistakes that I'm taking on. These are just things that happen. But it's there, and I didn't have that realization until the last year. So I have spent a lot of time thinking every mistake I make is because of that. And when that comes out, people will know that I came from that background, and they'll listen to the errors more than they'll listen to me. And that's really annoyed me because I've said it before jokingly, but I mean it. The S in Stephanie really does stand for share. One of the guiding things in my life is I can't not share information, ideas, and so forth. It is my, as my friend Evan says, it is my dharma to share. It is my purpose in life. That is the most core thing in me. So to have the meaning blocked by the lack of accuracy of my language has always annoyed me. I'm not sure if that's happening, but I have always thought it was happening. the irony and the good thing that comes of all of this is that my attraction to culture and languages is part of what led me to teaching English overseas, which ironically is where I met the love of my life, my husband. And the goodness that came from that relationship, and especially that group of folks that we met in that teaching context, in that year, the first year that we knew each other, that experience has, to this day, still helped me and built up my awareness of myself and what I want from life and from relationships and from work and from languages and from just so many aspects of life. So despite all of the fear and the anger and the confusion of my language shame, it's still languages that led me not just to one person, although that's very significant, but to, I don't know that I've gotten rid of my language shame, but to continue to work on, continue to be curious about languages and culture despite having the language shame. I don't think it's ever going to go away, but having that supportive community really, really helped realize that you can have flaws and still be curious about something. And that's an important lesson, but it's still strong. I remember in grad school, when I say share, S is for share, I mean sometimes it's overshare. You may have noticed. I was taking this global English class that I loved and hated in equal amounts because a lot of the people in the class were spending a lot of time talking about how words hurt. And I spent my adult life, 10 years before that, in very opportunistic words and language can help you improve your life. They can open up worlds. So I didn't really want to have the conversation of words can hurt. I'm like, yeah, but is that what you want to spend your time on? So, but somehow in my final project, I ended up doing, because of things that were happening in the writing classes that I was teaching and the master's classes that I was taking on teaching English as a second language, I was really, really sick of the language shame that I thought academia was putting on these second language learners, who were generally more fluent and more multilingual than most of the people who were putting the shame in academia, that were putting the shame, intentionally or not, on the language learners. And so as my rebellion moment, and to complete the task of my final project, I did a PechaKucha, which is a really interesting, fast-paced presentation style of language shame, the cloak of shame, I think is what I called it, language shame in the second language writing classroom. I don't know if that was filmed. I probably should have filmed it. It was a little personal, very academic, because we had to bring in sources and build up a point and all that kind of stuff, but basically it was my way to say to the academic audience, cut it the hell out. These people are doing more with language than you are, and you're stopping them by being condescending and labeling them in ways that don't help. It was a very small audience. It was a class, and we invited people from the department, but it was during finals week, and you know how that goes. Everybody's busy. But for me, it was very cathartic to talk about this cloak of language shame. Again, I don't think it's ever going to go away, but the more it's identified and the more it's, I don't even know demystified's the word, it's a pretty straightforward thing. But I think the more it can be talked about, the more it can just stop. I don't think it will ever stop. People shame each other over language all the time. Even quote-unquote native speaker to native speaker will make fun of accents, people will make fun of mistakes, people will correct each other. There's all kinds of shit that happens with language that drives me crazy. It's just to varying degrees. And I don't know, I think that's it. So, that's one of the pillars of things that has held me back, that I have let hold me back. I will take full responsibility for it. I was pretty aware of this early on, probably before I should have been aware of it, because I saw people react to my parents' language abilities, and I rarely saw my parents confused or unable to do something with language, but people got tripped up on their accents and on sometimes their inaccuracies. I think language is for communication. Communication was happening. People were being tribal. It's one of the times that I find myself being very defensive for my parents, despite the damage that was done with words from my parents. It's a very complex relationship. It's actually a non-relationship right now, and for a very long time. But it's a very complex bag or box of emotions. Okay, so that's one of my pillars. That's one of the things that I have let hold me back from pushing through is, and it's not just in speaking, it's in every facet. And it's not just in second languages, it's also in my first. So, and this is probably why I gravitated towards writing at the beginning of my communication sharing on the internet, is because you can edit writing. Fun fact, I didn't when I blogged a lot. I would just frantically type out what I was thinking and my ideas and all of that kind of stuff, and then I would post it and leave the mistakes in there, and it drove people crazy. But I also had a tiny fan base for the time anyway. So it's kind of ironic. I have language shame, but I also don't want to spend too much time editing because I have too much to say. Now say, then write, share. I have too much to share. I've always had too much to share. Anyway, so there's that, shame. So what was the first one? I don't know. I'm going to have to make a list and like have little note cards so I can tell you as I'm building them up. I think I'm up to 3 or 4. I imagine there's probably a top 10 list of things I've used to hold myself back language-wise all this time. On the other side of that, there's all the things that I've done to learn about languages. So hopefully one will go down as the other goes up. Because like I said, I don't think this stuff is going to ever completely go away. But when you know your bad habits, you're more likely to stop doing them early on. We probably never don't. Ah! See? We probably never stop completely, but we can be aware, right? That is maturity. I am not used to this world. Anyway, alright, so language shame. I've got it in spades. I could probably get a tattoo on it, but I prefer to focus on the good aspect of really digging language and culture and all of the nuances and craziness and interesting things that we can learn about each other via that. Do you have language shame? Do you want to share that? If you want to share it in public, feel free to dig into the comments. If you'd prefer to talk about this in private, I'm available via Gmail, or any private message in social media. Go for it. I can talk about this stuff for days, and I think it's important to talk about it. Bye-bye.